Well, of course, we are here to discuss the return of In Vain with the new album or upcoming album Solemn, due to be released on April 19, if I'm correct. Honestly, I don't know how to start this interview properly because I'm left overly emotional by this album.
Uh, I think the goal was to create an album that has longevity, so that you
Hmm.
can listen to it for a long time, that you can kind of discover new things, that there is a lot of variety. If because we have released a couple of singles, but a single isn't representative for the album because you
Right.
just hear one single and then you thought, oh, this is, the a single is put in a specific place on the track list for the album because maybe it's a slower song and then you have a fast song before it, and so I think the goal of the album is to have a lot of variety, music that's interesting that you can listen to, as I said, for a long time. You can discover new things with uh, and that it's not like every song is the same. So, some
Hmm.
bands you listen to their songs, and if you've heard one or two, maybe they're great songs, but the other songs are almost the same. So try to have some variety. There is definitely a lot of emotions. Like we have a lot of melodies, obviously, if that's what you say.
Yeah.
I'm I'm not 100% sure what you mean by vulnerable.
Well,
How
this is my experience with the album.
yeah.
There are a couple of songs that I just uh that I feel like are unbelievable emotionally. Um, I
I
we will get to that later, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned that the intention was to write an album that passed the test of time, and I think you guys achieved that because, well, you have achieved that in the past. For example, with an album like Enigma, it's been over 10 years now, and I think that
yeah.
that album hasn't aged one bit. You can go back to that album and listen to a fresh sound and ideas. And I believe maybe we should start by going back to that era of the band because I believe that album opened the door for a new era of extreme music as a whole, or at least in my experience, I discovered a new world of ideas and nuances in extreme metal. Yeah, let's go back to that point, or to the mindset of the band or you as a composer in those times.
Um, yeah, so I was just thinking, for when you say vulnerable, did you mean maybe did you mean to say like touching or moving or something like
Yeah, yeah.
I guess some of the songs are definitely like that. But anyway, yeah, Enigma. Maybe even though I wrote the album, but actually I think you describe it exactly how I also feel about that album. And actually also it took took some years, like before I realized how well received the album has been, and it seems still people are discovering it.
Mm,
And I would also say it's the really good albums. They sound fresh. Like you can put them on 10 years later, and they still sounds really fresh. It isn't like, oh, it was good when it was released, but now it's outdated. The really
mm.
good records are still really good, and it maybe sounds cocky, but I think that is such an album. But when I wrote that, it's hard to just start with that album because every album I've written, I've always been a little bit affected by the previous album.
Mm.
So the first album we didn't do any pre-production or whatever. I just put together a lot of riffs and of course tried to arrange it in a smart way, and then we just headed straight into the studio. We received a lot of great feedback on that. Then post that album, the second one, which was Mantra, I got into a lot of like post metal and like doom metal, like slower stuff. So
Mm.
I thought, maybe I should try to write some slower songs. I've always, as a songwriter, I've always kind of liked also a challenge, like, hey, could I be able to write, such a song, like, I don't know, death metal song, whatever? Could I be able to write a progressive song? So I tried to challenge myself.
Mm.
But after Mantra, I thought we need to have some up-tempo songs again, and
Okay.
that's how I started on Enigma, and then I didn't do anything different than that. I thought, okay, let's have a little bit more up tempo, because I think on Mantra there was quite a few slower, darker songs. It's more like a dark aura on that album. Enigma is a lot, not at least 50% quite up tempo, not
Oh yeah.
black metal fast, but more like has a higher pace. And then I also some funny backstories. Like I've seen, like, I think it's Image of Time and Floating on the Murmuring Tide, the last track. They're actually, I think there are two tracks or two pair of tracks that were actually one, but
Okay.
that I decided to split them and create two new songs. I think originally Image of Time and Floating was, or I'm not 100%, but Floating was just like an outro of some songs on a song, and I thought, hey, this riff is actually quite cool. I can build something more around it. I think there was two songs like that was so two songs that became four, and built upon. But I don't. It's a long time ago now. It's more than. So it was released 10 years ago. It's probably like 12 years ago, or maybe more, since I wrote the music. I can't really remember what music I listened to back then, but yeah, I also think I would also add this. I think that was the first In Vain album with a really good production. I'm not so happy with the first song, with the production on the first two, and I also think that our first album received really good critics, and then on the second one, also a lot good critics, but not as good as on the first. And then maybe people had lowered their expectations, and we were able to surprise again. I think it's always easier for bands if you can kind of surprise. The higher the expectations, like if people are expecting, a fantastic album, it's almost impossible to disappoint. But if
Right.
people have like, yeah, I'm not so sure, then it's easier, to surprise them. And I also think the Enigma album, there is some nostalgia maybe for some people also around it. It came at a point in time, people had maybe not heard similar type of music, versus if, let's say, we had released Enigma today, would people have liked it the same or not? That's the big question. A lot of people forget that with every album, like for me also, favorite albums of some of my bands, they are my favorite albums because of the time they were released and because of what music I had listened to and
Of course.
where I was in my life when I listened to those albums. But they might have released objectively better albums later on. But then I have been on a different stage in my life and have listened to more music, so it's less kind of less new to me. You know what I mean? So I think
Yeah.
that's a factor you have to remember. Well, long answer.
No,
I'm not sure if it was what.
I do agree 100% on the last thing you mentioned here. It has to do with time, context, circumstances of the audience, in the way it's being received, the music or the sounds or the ideas as a whole. And I do agree also that Enigma, as far as I'm concerned, is the biggest in scope compared to the previous record. Maybe you start adding more nuance and more approaches in different songs, So the whole album became like a full arc of I don't know, different tonalities, different inflections, different pacing. And for me, I will defend the idea that that album helped me to grow as a listener in the way that I appreciate stream music as a whole. So far, 10 years later, or well, in the present, I think we have a different references to Norway sound or the approach of extreme prog music in your country. But I believe that album was very important for the audience to have something to expect for those bands. Like if you ask me, I think In Vain is a very important band to understand the way most bands over there express their music in terms of the feeling, the colors, the coldness to it. And for example, I was speaking a couple of weeks ago with the main composer in Borknagar, which coincidentally is releasing also a new album the same year as In
Yeah.
Vain, and he was talking about.
Øystein, right? Or
Sorry.
Øystein? You spoke to
Yeah,
Øystein?
yeah,
Yeah.
Øystein. And well, he spoke about how pretty much his music is a reflection of his context, his surroundings, you know, the weather, the landscape. So I also would say that In Vain is also a reflection of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think maybe I would say I can certainly understand why he says that, because Borknagar, also with the lyrics, that's always been around nature and this kind of epicness that goes into the music. I can certainly understand why he would say that. Maybe he goes on a walk in the mountains and he can get inspiration to new songs. To be 100% honest, I've never been like that's not how I've received my inspiration. It's for me, it's been only through music. But maybe in the on a subconscious level, I have been, what you call influenced by nature as well. But typically, I've been mostly inspired when I discover new bands that just do something I haven't heard from other bands. It doesn't have to be metal. I have to say though that's harder and harder to find. It's just like I used to say, like it's like with restaurants and traveling. The more you have eaten in good restaurants or the more you have traveled, it's harder to kind of find something you haven't experienced before or seen. You know what I mean? Versus if you're going on your first trip abroad somewhere.
Mm.
So, but maybe I can mention one more thing about Enigma, like what we did on that album. We did a pre-production, so we actually, we actually made a proper demo. And as I already mentioned, two of the songs were split into two, so two songs became four. So from the pre-prod, we did a lot of changes, moved stuff around, and I'm okay, Um, and of course, since then, we have always done pre-productions just for various reasons. We didn't have time or the opportunity to do that on the first two albums. So I think maybe that also helped the songs become even better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you approach the process differently. That remain to these days being the same, maybe.
Yeah, I've always been I've always had a very analytical approach to music. Maybe,
Okay.
I read a lot of some songwriters are like, no, you have to go what's natural, just go with the flow and feel. I would I would listen to my songs and always think, okay, what's if you have the riffs you have are like your assets, and what are the best ways to use them? Let's say you have 10 really fantastic riffs, and then you have 10 that are okay, but they're good enough, but not the best ones. How can you
Mm.
put those things together in the smartest way to create the best songs? Like, are some riffs, can you just use them as like a transition riff
Yeah.
without dragging down the quality of the song? And even I have the philosophy that some riffs will enhance the song if they are not bad, but of a lower quality than other riffs, because then the other good riffs will stand out.
Yeah.
This is becoming very theoretical now, but it's all about balance. And as I said, let's say you have a song with a fantastic riff, you use it once, maybe then you can think, hey, maybe I can build a whole song around this riff. That's something I've done a couple of times. But I've always followed my gut feeling. Like when I've created a song, I've always listened to it. And if I don't have the right gut feeling, I know I have to change something. Sometimes I know what it is, but other times I don't know. And I just have, but in time, I realize, okay, this is what needs to be changed. And yeah, so it's like an analytical approach. I don't use the guitar when I compose music a lot. I basically sit down and write from my head directly down in like a software where I can store the songs.
Okay.
And if I need to, I'll pick up the guitar to check, if I have the riffs in the right way. But I've never been like a jammer. I'm not good at jamming on guitar at all. I'm not good at improvising. That's something I try to learn. I only create music in my head and then directly back in the days, I used to write it on paper and record it down on a cassette recorder. Now I just put it into the computer and store it, and that's
Well,
just how I have done it.
Nanto, you mentioned this about being overly analytical with the process. This helped me to understand a little bit better the ideas on this album, or why it's for me too difficult, more difficult than usual, to come up with a few questions to analyze the pieces or the part of this record, because I think it's almost it's an integral part, you know. And yes, it's about the balance and the flow, and how the transitions are created in some of these songs. You mentioned something about writing from the main riff, and there's a particular song on this album, the maybe the second single, which is called "At the Going Down of the Sun." The main riff on that song is so satisfying to listen to, and I want to ask you, is it satisfying for you to feel the riff in your hand with that song?
To feel the riff in my hand, or in
Yeah,
my
I mean, it feels so
to
powerful,
play
man.
it.
Yeah.
That's actually funny. That's another example. Like that riff, main riff. I assume you are talking about with it's a strings on.
Yeah.
That used to be the outro of a track on our previous album, which was a bonus track called Ghost Path. And then I thought, first of all, that song was already very long, and I thought, I can't use this great riff as an outro on a track that's like number 7 or 8 as a bonus. No one's going to hear it. It's too good. So I built the whole song around it.
Wow.
So that's just like what we talked about previously, how sometimes I take a riff and just build a new song around it. And yeah, I like that riff a lot. We actually play that song live on a few songs we have, shows we have done recently, just to try it out. I think that's a really cool, heavy riff. Absolutely. And let me also mention, I said I had an analytical approach to songwriting. I try not, there is a balance. If you go too far, if you can sit around and you can analyze your songs to death, like there's a balance here. Like, as I said, when I have the right gut feeling, I stop. I would never sit down and go further and further and say, yeah, can we make it better? Can we make it better? Could we, you can, there is not a limit, you can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
When I get the right stomach feeling, I kind of stop. But so there is a balance. But yeah, that's a riff that it's kind of like that's a heavy, slow song. So it's like I couldn't have an album. For me, it wouldn't be interesting as a songwriter to write a whole album with this like slow, heavy songs, like slower pace. That's why I think we were coming with another single in not too long, which is more up tempo. So try to have a balance with everything.
Well, actually, it's funny that you mentioned this, because the two singles so far are together on the track list, the 3 and 4 track, and I agree with that thing that you mentioned about maybe each song is a reaction to the previous one, so the experience of the listening album, or the album becomes like each song refreshes the idea on the album, And what I like about this main riff of the song of the Going Down of the Sun is that, for me, the main riff of this song is like the center of In Vain sound. It may go left, it may go right, but every moment standing here, is very enjoyable, and that's part of why I have grown attached to the sound of In Vain, because it can be very surpriseful. And speaking about that, I want to ask you, or need to ask you, about the use of saxophone. How did you approach to this idea back then with at the first time you used saxophone? Was it like, okay, this song needs something extra, let's use saxophone, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, just to first comment on what you mentioned, these singles. Like, I feel like releasing singles, I understand it's part of the game, and when you release an album, you need to stretch the attention as far out as you can. And now we're like bombarding social media with all kinds of stuff, and I'm not a big fan of it, but if you just drop the album and then don't make any fuss about it, not everyone will get notice it, right? So, but when you pick singles, like for us, it's like, okay, if we had to drop only one single, people would guess, okay, that's how the new album sounds like, and I would say, no, it's not. It's just one out of 9 songs. So
Yeah.
it's very hard to represent the album, and also you're kind of supposed to pick like the best songs, at least the ones that you hook people with a little
Yeah.
bit immediately. You
Yeah.
can't like release the kind of grower songs,
Yeah.
so it's tricky. But the saxophone, so first time we used it was on our second EP that was released in 2005. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but there was a song called In Remembrance. You can find this on YouTube. We also re-recorded that song for our first album as a bonus track. But yeah, on that song In Remembrance, there is a really beautiful sax part. I still think one of the best parts we've had with saxophone is kind of like towards before the outro of the song. And yeah, I had a friend who was a saxophone player, and we had this kind of floating part with some synth pad, like mysterious vibe, and we thought it could be a great idea. And he was basically improvising, and then I moved his stuff a little bit around and like created some pauses, and and then ever since, I think, yeah, we have had this on every album, and now I've seen a lot of other bands have done it later on, and even some bands that have it full time in every track. We've always only used it as a kind of a spice. Um, but that was the first time was on our second EP that came out in 2005, and yeah, we have always been very open to experimenting, and on our debut album we had 20 musicians in total. So but we have never experiment just to kind of for the sake of experimenting.
Right.
It's because we think it adds to the song.
Yeah. Well, it has become a point of references, the use of saxophone, for example, and something the audience can expect of your songs. And of course, the first single showcased that. There is some use of saxophone here, or also what it sounds to me like trumpets on the first song on the album, maybe.
On the first, yeah, on that song there's a horn section.
Horn, yeah, yeah.
So that's like saxophone, horns, and trumpet and trombone.
Okay, trombone. Well, I want to ask you about the maybe the expectations of your audience versus the expectations you have as a composer for your music. For us in Vain has earned a reputation, and there's an idea in our head of as to what it should sound, and this is a very broad in the sense that you could incorporate or experiment with a lot of new elements into your music, and the audience will be open to that idea. And I think that the important part of the band is that it has cultivated an audience that is open to the use of different elements external to the main parts of extreme metal. But let's take that versus how do you approach evolving as a composer. You have mentioned that it's a well, I understand it's like a continuation, but how do you balance also that part where do you detach too much from your sound, the core sound of In Vain, and also the things that you want to explore in the future of your music?
Yeah, I think like I touched upon this a little bit earlier, but I think if you go and if you know our albums really well, you will see that we have kind of been all over the place. Like we have some songs that are um, call it not old school black metal, but like black metal or fast, very fast stuff with black
Mm,
metal vocals. We have had slow stuff, doomy slow stuff with only maybe clean vocals, and more kind of death metal and progressive, all kinds of stuff. And that's because I think it's fun as a songwriter to try to challenge myself and write different songs. I could never have played like or recorded 5 albums just black metal like that. That would be boring to me eventually. And But then, of course, we have tried to make this blend all these styles and still make it sound cohesive and not all over the place, not like a circus. So we try to that there is a red thread going here. So I feel that we have already been quite experimental. So it's not like we have already done quite a lot. I don't feel like there's a lot of extreme metal genres we haven't like experimented with. I mean, we could do like a full post-metal type of album that we haven't done, or we could do like we could incorporate more synths or whatever. We have a little bit of that on the upcoming album.
Okay.
But I don't really know where we could take it. Like if we want to do something on a radical new step, maybe it would have to be to go softer, maybe to create, I don't know, a rock album or whatever. I am a little bit hesitant on changing too much. I feel like I think you can evolve as a band, but if you want to go something completely different, maybe it's better that you do that through a new band. Like
Right.
if you change, like, but Ulver is a great example, but it took them many years. Like they were black metal and suddenly they released something completely different. People didn't expect it. And then they probably lost a lot of fans. I think they took them quite a few years before they gathered a new fan base. And then eventually now it seems that their old fans also love their new style, but I think it was quite a long road for them. But that's one of the exceptions, I think, for many other bands. If they would switch styles completely, I think it could be really tough to kind of rebuild the band. So I don't see that we will do something radically different. As I said, then it's maybe better to launch that through a new band to just separate it. But maybe I don't know. For me now, it's also like we're kind of established as this metal band. I don't really have any other music that I would like to write now. I mean, I have other music I would like to write, but that's so far from In Vain that it wouldn't suit there at all. So will probably be around this genre, I guess. As I say, I feel we already have a very large playing ground that we can operate in because
Okay.
it's not like we are only doing black metal or only
Right.
old school death metal. We're doing all over the place in extreme metal. But I don't know. I haven't written any, I haven't started thinking about the new album at all. So
Well, you mentioned about maybe the next album with more synths, and there's a particular moment in the song Eternal Waves with the use of synths, or some layers there that resembles some synthesizers. And
yeah,
for me, that song, man, beautiful, beautiful. The last two songs on the record are beautiful, but before that, the fifth song on the album, I don't know which one will be the next single, but I hope it isn't the song where the wines meet, because that song made the whole album for me. It's very different to what I'm used to listen in vain. And I want to ask you about that song in particular. How did you structure the melody and the well, maybe the vocal work is very far from your work. I don't know if you do these things together with him, the vocalist.
yeah. You mentioned the synths, so let me just point out that's
Yeah,
actually
sorry,
the
I'm all over
the
the
new
place.
drummer we have. I just want to highlight the new drummer we have, which joined us around 2018. Tobias, great drummer, but he is also a really a synth geek, so he knows a lot about these synths. He has tons of old analog synths, so all the
Okay.
synths you hear, it's him who has arranged and created the sounds. So that's kind of a new tool we have now that we didn't have in the past. So maybe that's something we can experiment more with in the upcoming, maybe future releases. On Where the Winds Meet, that track, the main riff, the kind of the chorus, I've had that riff, I think I've had that kind of laying around for many years. If I'm not mistaken, I think this song has been tried out as a demo on the previous album as well, but
Okay.
we didn't kind of figure completely out how to arrange it or something. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it's an idea that's been around for a long time, because sometimes, you know, you can have the music there, but you don't figure out how the vocals should be.
Mm.
Often the vocals are easy, you know, it has to be growl here, it has to be screaming black here, we need singing, you know, but other times it can be tricky. But yeah, on that song it's quite melodic, and as you say, um quite like call it sensitive, clean vocals. It's not like this kind of Viking chant, but more like more closer.
Yeah.
It's something I try to challenge our singer to develop. I feel that he needs to develop his voice a lot more, so he can kind of have different kind of expressions, not just sing in the same way on every song. Like he needs to have like a guitar player. Sometimes you play hard, sometimes soft, sometimes you have vibrato, sometimes not. You know, you create a different tone just by how you play it, even though it's the same tone. Um, so I think on that song, at least we were able to do something new on the clean vocals, and yeah, we are a little bit afraid. You know, I mean, is it? We try when you create a song like that, is kind of what do you call it? Like very kind of maybe as your first word is emotional. There is also, if you go too far, it can become cheesy. So
Yeah.
we are always trying always to remind we have to stay on the right side of that. I feel we did it. I mean, it's kind of also some really hard extreme riffs on that song. So
Yeah. When you have all these elements and all this space in between, of course, you can do a lot of things trying to fit the mold. But in my opinion, I think these songs breaks the formality on the album so far in my listening experience, and I do appreciate the vocal delivery as well as the companionship of the riff. And again, I will repeat myself, saying that the next song on the album, Beyond the Pale, again, it kind of reacts in the mood that the previous song sets the listener, you know, and it builds upon that and upon the expectation of the listening experience, and this is something that never ends. And then we get to the final two songs, Eternal Waves. Wow, man! I mean, this is something new for me entirely, and I'm not just saying this. Please believe me that this song just do something entirely different. It feels operatic, and then the last song it feels even more operatic. Is this the same singer of the band doing the vocals on the last song?
no, I don't
Okay,
know. I haven't seen. I know that you have access to the album on some kind of portal, but I heard that there wasn't all the info there. I
no,
requested, yeah, the label. I have to say, very cool to talk to someone that has know the. It seems you really listen to the album and know it really well, because I know a lot of people. It seems people are more and more busy now, and uh, it's like, do people even listen to a whole album at all? Or I
mm,
mean, but you mentioned the track list, how the songs react to each other.
yeah,
I feel we put a lot of thought behind the track list, like of like simple stuff. If you have two similar songs or two fast songs, you don't put them next to each other. Maybe you have a slower song than a fast, like try to have a balance. Of course, all bands would say if they have some songs they think are better than others, or at least more kind of maybe catchy or whatever, they would put them earlier, because that's just how it is these days. People listen more to the first tracks than the last ones. I always feel that the last song on an album should be like a kind of a, a ground finale in one way, or yeah, you know what I mean, like a big song. And maybe the songs that you are a little bit uncertain about, or like the kind of grower songs or whatever, maybe you put them somewhere in between, you know.
yeah, yeah,
But Was it Eternal Waves or was it the last one you asked me about?
Well, I just mentioned about Eternal Waves being so unexpected in the arrangements, and when that song ended for me, felt like a finale, you know. But then
yeah.
the next song it starts building up with, and then you hear the sudden different vocals, and then
Yes.
a more operatic temperament, you know. You know, it's unbelievably good. And I think that this song is especially constructed as as a closer track.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I feel the title "Watch for Me on the Mountain." I feel that's also the title tells me something. It should be like an ending or something.
Mm,
But so you asked me if there was a different singer. That's correct. So as I said, we didn't. I think initially the info and the lyrics and everything wasn't on that portal. I think if you go back to the portal you had access to, you can find all the album info, like musicians and lyrics should be there now. So if it's not, you should let me know, and because I've told the label to put it up. But that's a different singer, and that's a guy called Vidi, and we toured with the band. We were like on a tour with three bands. I think it was no three or four or something back in 2018. And one of the bands, like one of the support bands, was Subterranean Masquerade.
okay.
They're kind of like a progressive rock slash metal band from Israel, and yeah, we became good friends with them, and
So is the singer is David Davy?
yeah, it's called W.
Okay.
Davy or Vidi, or he calls himself Vidi. So we needed something. We tried with our singer, like we needed something else there. We needed. You can listen to the track, you hear it's different. We felt it didn't kind of work with our singer. We didn't. We needed a different expression, and Vidi is really. He's a really strong singer. You can ask him, like he can sing the same sentence in 10 different ways. He has so many different types of expressions. So it's really cool to record with him. We did a live recording with him when he was live in the studio in Israel, and we were listening live via some kind of software. I don't remember. And we had kind of sent him a guide on the melodic lines, but he expressed them in his way, like how he sang them, what kind of voice he used, power or no power. So we experimented a lot with the expression before we kind of landed on something. And he also added his own melodic choices here and there, like he created his own lines. So I think he really he we couldn't have done that song without him, I think. So he did a really good job.
It's a very special song. And in particular, these two last songs are what give me the idea of something that feels overly emotional. You know, it gave me goosebumps. The 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 motifs on these songs, and in my experience, when a band decides to end things with a song with songs like this, it maybe show that something different maybe in the future, you know, not just in for the sake of ending properly the album, but also like foreshadowing something that may happen in the future. So perhaps In Vain could become more operatic in itself in future releases.
Why do you say operatic? Just so I understand, what does that mean to you? Do you mean you have
Like,
some bands?
well, more dramatic in a sense, you know, with a sense of drama, like being expressing with uh, like a opera singer.
And not with an opera singer. I think if you mean like, sorry, I just have to answer here.
Yeah,
Um,
or maybe the term is operistic.
if you mean like very dramatic,
Yeah.
when you say operatic, I feel like power metal stuff. You like this very,
Oh,
uh, but I agree with you that Vidi, his singing is more dramatic, as you say.
yeah.
But we have to go with kind of this guys we have in the band. So I'm not sure if that's the kind of style Sindri is able to sing, if you know what I mean.
Well, I understand that it was a special occasion choosing him as a collaborator, but also the tempo on the songs and the arrangements with the horn section and the use of keys there feels somehow like a foreshadowing of something different. And I mean, for me, what this album solves, or what I do expect in every record for every band, is that they incorporate something different, to the experience. And these last two songs, and what I mentioned earlier, where the wines meet, are like the most different songs on the album when it concerns to the in-vein sound. I don't know if that makes
Yeah,
sense for you.
maybe you can say that the clean vocals we've had in the past have often been like harmonic choir based vocals, like several vocals together. And I kind of challenged our singer to kind of develop his expression to sing more like solo vocals, just one singer alone, more kind of vulnerable and emotional. So in that sense, maybe that's something we can experiment more with in the future, I hope. And not only have like these big choirs every time there's a clean vocals. But
Right.
I mean, it really comes down to, you have to work with the guys you have in the band and like what they are good at and not, and But I think what Vidi did on that track, that's something it's hard to kind of just go out and recreate. Like he's a really strong singer in terms of how much he can vary his expression.
Mm.
And not all singers are like that.
I want to correct something. I didn't receive the information on the album, just the link with the music. So I'm kind of blind here. I don't know about the concept. Is there a specific concept on the album title and the lyrics? Can you explain a bit of that?
No, there isn't a specific concept. Well, like as I talked about the songs, they are all over. Like there's a big variety in the songs, and it's the same with the lyrics. They are also, and it's always been the case for us. They are all over the place. Like the first single we released, "Season of Unrest," that's probably the most personal lyrics we've had, and that's the singer's. It's an experience from his own life. I don't want to go into that because I feel it's something he should share himself at some point when he wants to. But it was a extremely serious, something very how we call it, yes, serious or life changing that happened to him. And then in
Mm.
the end, it had a good ending, but it looked really dark at some point. And then we have more like kind of what I call it, more songs, lyrics more like about nature and stuff. I've written quite a lot about the third single, which is coming out soon, is more like about mental, what do you call it, mental struggles. Like I've had that a lot. I know it seems to be more and more common now. And I've written quite a few songs about stuff like that, and some songs more like about kind of where the world is heading and etc. But we've never had a concept. I think I have to admit, I think it's hard to write lyrics, and if we would have to limit ourselves to one concept, I don't know, it could have been very challenging. It
Mm.
feels easier when you can use many different subjects.
But maybe the connection is with the melodies, and I just can't imagine that you or anyone would come up with melodies like this without having something heavily emotional behind, heavily personal. And for me, as far as I know, in vain, this has the best melodies in the album. Maybe is what will set this record apart in the catalog of the band, the use of melodies. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how people kind of appreciate this album, because as I touched upon a little bit earlier, I think a lot of albums, like people who are fans of Emperor, for instance. I read an interview with Ishan recently, and he said he didn't want to release a new Emperor album because he said we cannot compete with nostalgia.
Mm.
And he has a great point. Let's say they drop a new album, regardless of how good a new Emperor album would be, many would probably say, yeah, it's good, but not as good as the old ones, because they're so connected with the old ones. They have so much nostalgia attached to them that they can't compete with it. But if the same guys had never listened to a single Emperor album, and you say, hey, here are 3 albums from Emperor, which is your favorite? Maybe they would say the last one, a new one. But you know what I mean? So it's hard for me to think. I feel the songs, there's a lot of music here, at least. There are big songs, very epic songs, I would say. If they have more melodies or not than the other albums, I'm not sure. I feel it's so. I think it's hard when you've written the songs to kind of break it down,
Right.
or it's to compare. But I would say it's the best production we've had, and that always helps. Like, it's, of course, it's important to have good production. I really think the sound is the best we've ever had. And if it's the most melodic, I'm not sure. I haven't thought about it, to be honest.
Well, not the most melodic, but maybe the one with the melodies shine the most. And that's only my opinion, what I can offer from my listening experience on this album. I
Yeah.
do agree with the thing that you mentioned about Ishan, but I think you should fight nostalgia. That's what is that's what it's all about, to challenge the audience, to challenge the artist itself. If not, why we can so what's the purpose in continuing to listen to a band if nostalgia is all about? Maybe it's like maybe he doesn't want to mess and try to surpass the idea of Emperor over time. But well, I think this, in my opinion, is the best record of In Vain. Speaking of
Oh, good.
my
So you like it
context,
more than Enigma, or
dude,
uh,
definitely. Enigma is
you
a
like
big,
it more?
yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
cool. Well, that's cool to know. I think what you say, I find it a little bit funny, because I think it's also good if you have a really strong album, or several, and it's hard if fans say, it's hard to compete against those. That's also a great thing. It means that you have released some great albums. I find it a little bit like, call it strange or funny, when you have these bands that say every album, and it's the 10th album they release, and say, this is by far our best album.
Yeah, it's just
Maybe it's just something they say, of course, but if you go down back, okay, how good was the first one? Were the first ones then?
yeah,
So I've never said this is the best. I just say this is a new album. It's different. Maybe it's how it's. I usually say it's not like sports. You cannot say this is better because this runner reached the finish line before the other. He was number one. That's up to the listener. Let's see what they say. I mean, it's a new album, and I'm very happy that people really like some of our older albums. It's not, and I am totally honest. I hope they will like the new one, of course. But I'm glad that you say you like it more than Enigma, because that should count for a lot, I think.
I know that Enigma has become like a staple for the band, something that has become like the cult record for In Vain. But let's think, for example, a band like Enslaved. I don't know if you listened to the last album of the band from last year.
I haven't checked it yet.
I mean, that band has 3 decades of career, and they still continue to challenge themselves, you know, develop a sound, an idea of what enslaved is, and
Yeah.
that album for me says like, okay, this band has years and years in the future because they continue to add new life to their sound. And here I see parts of that, you know, you are still trying to add something new to your sound. Of course, you can grow as a composer in the way you approach and work the production of your ideas, but then also you have something new for the listener to digest, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think, you know, I think, as I said a little bit earlier, that you can make, you know, small changes to every album, like, or not necessarily small, but, you know, a little bit. But unless you make like these gigantic leaps that suddenly you play like Ulver, for instance, they made it from black metal to electronica, I think, in one album. Maybe I'm wrong, but it was a big change. That's a little bit risky, maybe. That's not all bands that could pull off something like that. But you know, you can always add and tweak your sound a little bit and go further. I do, though, believe if you listen to fantastic songwriters, like, for instance, Mikael Åkerfeldt from Opeth, probably the best songwriter, in my opinion, in extreme metal ever. There is also a limit, I think, for every songwriter where it kind of stops. You can go back and listen to Mikael or Opeth albums, and you will, when you listen to many of them, you'll start to recognize what sort of tricks he's using. You see, that's this kind of riff. Yeah, that's, you know, similar to that and that riff. It's kind of that type of riff. Let's call it category A riff. And, you know, if you listen to it carefully, you will see it's very hard for even the best songwriters to always come up with something new. At some point, it's like you realize that they were kind of reusing old tricks, and that's not a bad thing. It's very natural, I think. If you still make great songs, you can do that. But at some point, like for him, I think they released, before they changed the style, 6-7 albums, and they were all 1 hour long. You know, at some point, it's hard to always do new things. Like, I think that's one of the reasons why they started to play a new style, because he realized, I'm starting to repeat myself, and I would assume he has such a high integrity as a songwriter that he didn't. Then he said, "Then I'd rather do something new." He could probably release several, new albums in the same old, like, death prog style, fantastic albums, but it will feel for him to repeat himself. It's just a theory I have. I'm not sure, but
Well,
I think it's unavoidable at some point.
this is something that fascinates me, as I am something that dedicates time to talk with artists and try to understand what is behind or in their mind. And it's about the language of music or a particular sound of a particular band or the vocabulary and how they express their music. And I think at some point it's very useful if the artists start to play around with outside elements of their comfort zone, just for the sake of add a different inflection or a different, language or vocabulary into their music. So the outcome will be very different, and they will learn to express very differently, as in the previous works. You know, for example, bands like Oranzi Pazuzu, um, maybe Prince of Everest, Plutus North. I think these are bands that are continually developing something outside of their comfort zone. So just to pose a question for you, maybe we talked a little bit about that previously, but would you
Yep.
consider to try something very differently, if not with In Vain, with another project, just for the sake of growing in the scope, or how do you understand your approach to compositions?
No, I would be interested in, like, I have had talks with other guys, like, about writing different kind of music. There are other genres I really like. The
For
problem is
example,
like more. kind of like this kind of post metal, or
Ooh,
I liked it more in the past, but now I feel there's so many bands doing it, and then I'm less interested. But more like the style where you have like maybe several amps on stage, old amps, you crank them into each other and you create this big, massive sound. Instead of like in Vain, we use, digital pedal boards, etc. And then not screaming vocals, and maybe singing, but not black or death metal vocals, more like shouting style.
yeah.
Very heavy at some parts, and then really melodic and calm. But the thing is a lack of time. Like I don't I barely have enough time to write music for In Vain. So I don't really have time to start new bands. Like I'm not a full-time musician. I have a full-time job. I have family. So there's a lot of stuff I would like to do, but I just don't have the time. That's an issue. And then would I do that with In Vain? I feel like we've kind of established ourselves as this kind of progressive extreme metal. We have a big playground we can play around with. We could do like, let's say, a fast extreme metal album with only fast stuff, or we could do like a more death or doom. We can do a lot of stuff, but to do something completely different can also be risky. As I said also earlier, I think if it would be too different, maybe I would launch it under a different way, because I wouldn't want to tarnish the legacy or the reputation of In Vain. But I haven't really thought about that. I'm not really sure, but I think there comes a point for all bands that, or for most songwriters, unless it's your job, that you
Right,
just get tired of writing the same music. So
right.
as I said, that's why I've always been experimenting since actually our first album. I've always tried to incorporate many different styles. Um, I don't know. You give me some suggestion what we could do, and maybe I can think about it.
And also you have, well, maybe you think about making things practical in a sense, because for example, Brutus North is a musician that only compose, never plays live. It's only him and his drummer, so he's continuously writing and writing and delivering material. So for his work or work ethic, it's something that um, functions well for him. Okay, I have a few questions for you.
Yeah.
Um, First, well, I read somewhere or maybe listening in a past interview of you that at the beginning you weren't interested in playing metal as a whole in your early years.
No, so my musical background started in my first band. The first band I started in was a grunge band.
Mm,
Yeah. Um, and then I kind of ventured further into harder and harder music. Then I started playing in a metalcore band. So we had screaming vocals, but it wasn't as heavy as, extreme metal. That's on a different, when you have the fast drums, the fast music, and even more extreme type of vocal.
mm,
And I got into that in the early 2000s. Um, that's how I got into that kind of music. So I started quite late with metal. I've never been a metalhead. So when people reference bands and like the early Metallica albums or whatever, I'm not familiar with it at all. Um, I've I've done my part of kind of listening. After I started writing metal, I've done my part of listening up on albums. Like I had a year I was listening a lot to Opeth, but that was way after those albums had been released. I
right.
just was catching up on stuff. And I've had different kind of I've tried to go into different kind of musical styles also outside metal and to learn. But yeah, I didn't start out as a metalhead. I've never really been. I ended up in this metal band actually a little bit by coincidence. Um, I do like metal a lot now, but it was really hard for me in the start. Like it took. I remember when I was listening to these really extreme metal bands. I could do one song at a time, but it was so intense. One of the first albums I mentioned also in previous interviews was Cyclone, World of Worms, the band from one of the guitar players of Emperor. They quit. I think they quit 10 years ago or something. I really liked the first album, World of Worms. But I could only listen to one song at a time. It was so intense and almost exhausting. But at the same time, I felt there was something there that hooked me. And eventually, I was kind of cured. And then I could listen to it, and yeah, it wasn't noise to me. I understood what they were trying to do, and I understood the music. It's just like coffee and wine, and you're not gonna listen like it at the first time. It takes time to appreciate the flavor. And yeah, so eventually I got into metal. The only metal I've never really been into, like super old school, very necro black metal, it's never really been my thing. Especially where there's kind of you make a point out of having a bad production or whatever. I've never really been into that. But besides that, I really enjoy all of it. But I've always listened to a lot of different music.
So the important bands that introduced you to the extreme metal side of music were Opeth and this man you mentioned with the Emperor member?
No, I mean, I don't remember. Like, I listen to a lot of heavy music, like metalcore. I don't know if you've listened to it. I don't listen to it that much anymore. But
I'm seeing your hoodie, Childhood, is about Dune or the band?
No, that's a band. I can talk about that after. That's hardcore, but actually one of my favorite is one of my favorite bands ever. And I think the songwriter in Shai Hulud is one of the best songwriters It's definitely the best songwriter ever in hardcore music. I would say he's on level with Mikael Åkerfeldt and other top guys, but he's not metal. He's hardcore. But I'm a huge Shai Hulud fan, and then so somehow I ventured from metalcore, which is more like really heavy screaming vocals, but you don't have the riffs are a little bit different. You don't have the growling vocals like death metal, and you don't have like this black metal screaming, and it's more a different style. So I would say death and black metal is even more extreme. And I don't remember. I remember Cyclone, World of Worms. I listened to a band called Sirius. I started to listen to Emperor. I don't really. This is now like 23, 24 years ago. I don't remember exactly what bands that transitioned me into except those albums I mentioned there. But I had a lot of catching up to do, so I was all over the place. I think I started with extreme, like faster stuff, and then eventually I got into like death metal stuff. Opeth, that was a little bit later. I started to listen to them, and then I really got hooked on it. It's a fantastic band, obviously.
It's interesting that you mentioned post metal as maybe one of your side interesting compositionally. Maybe a band like Cult of Luna is in your past also.
Yeah, I know them. I think ISIS was a really cool band. They quit many years ago. I think I really liked his sound, his vocals. I listened quite a lot to them at some point. Before the second album we released, Mantra, I was kind of into that music, but we never went that style, that direction. For me, the sound is different. Like, it's a different guitar sound. It's a different type of screaming vocals. Well, we had our former bass player. He has a really good screaming vocal like that. He had to quit the band. He went to the US to become a pilot, but he sang on the last song. No, he sang on our second album on a song he's singing, and then you have that kind of screaming vocals that I like. That is kind of like post metal style. It's a song called Summer, Fall, Burden, Winter. But yeah, I think that's I always thought for many years I was thinking I want to start a band playing that kind of music, but I never really had the time. But now I'm more like, I feel there are too many bands that have done it, and it's less interesting. But
well, I think post metal it's evolving quite nicely into something entirely different. I have two last questions for you.
yep.
Maybe you can suggest, recommend the audience and myself, something that you have discovered recently and that has left an impact in your experience.
It's it's a very boring answer. I really try. I mean, there's a lot. I think nowadays is so much music out there. It's a lot of great music, and the bar is kind of raised higher and higher. Like if you, I don't know if you watch MMA, but in the start MMA, you're like a kickboxer against a karate guy and a wrestler against, maybe a Muay Thai guy or whatever. But now all of them, they or most of them, are able to, yeah, they are good grapplers. They can box. They can wrestle. So they are more like well-rounded, and I feel a lot of bands are like that as well now. They are well-rounded. They have great riffs, and they are fantastic instrumentalists. It's harder to really stand out, but one band I felt had a very special sound. It's not very recent, but maybe a couple of years ago that I listened to quite a lot. Was it called Ulkerate? It's just what I'm from the top of my head now. I don't know if Ulkerate or Ulkerate, Ulkerate or something.
Ulcerate, yeah.
Ulcerate. And I feel they reminded me a little bit about Gorguts. I'm a big fan of Gorguts. I think that's a really good band. And then I should have prepared and gone through my playlist because there are so many bands around there. But I think a band called Mare Cognitum.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you know it, Mare Space Cognitum. It's a one-man black metal band, but
From
it's not.
Australia, right?
What?
From Australia.
Yeah, maybe that could be. I'm not sure. Maybe it's Australia. I don't know.
Or is Italy? I don't remember.
But it's kind of melodic black metal, but not Dimmu Borgir kind of melodic. Just really cool, catchy melodies on, but proper production on, like black metal kind of music. And there is another one I don't remember I think it was from Iceland or something that I listened to. Let me see if I can find it on.
Misterming, algo así, something like that.
I gave you. Let me see here. There was a guy who sent it to me. I have to. It's a shorter name, I think. Like was recommended this by a. By the way, this is not something new, but I'm also a big fan of Altar of Plagues, but they quit. But I think that's but they were in particularly live. I saw them live one time, and by coincidence, and it really blew my mind. Like really fantastic live band, a fantastic singer. I nag him on Instagram from time to time, saying you need to restart the band. So let's see. But see, I'm just scrolling to try to find the name of this band. Sorry. Yeah, Iotun or something like that. Iotun.
Yeah, I don't have the specific typos, but
I think it's from Iceland or something.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's from Denmark actually.
Well,
they're from Denmark.
Oh, okay. I would like to recommend you to listen to Oranzi Pasusu if you are not familiar with them.
It might be I put let me write this down, by the way. You say, how do you spell it? Orange?
Oranzi.
runs. Pa.
I send you the name in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, in the chat.
I do
Okay,
appreciate.
here. Yeah, perfect.
I do appreciate that you mentioned Ulcerate as one of a band that strikes you or left an impact in you. It's one of my favorite bands also. And similar to In Vain, I think it's one of the sounds that you can detach an element for the compositions because it all falls apart, you know. It's so well integrated, and this is how I feel about In Vain sound.
Thanks a lot. I mean, I'm very. If you have other, it seems like I can enjoy the music you're listening to. So if you have other bands that I should check out, please send to me. And I'm very happy to. I like bands that have some kind of originality. Like when you put them on, oh, it's that band.
Yeah.
Like
I
that's usually for all the music I really enjoy. There is some sense of originality. It doesn't mean that they have to create a new style. It can simply be, for instance, that they have a fantastic singer, or But I usually prefer bands like that.
Well, since we are in that topic, I will send you this name, Playgrounded from Greece.
Okay.
In my opinion, this is post metal in the modern era. Very different, very
Nice.
synthesized bass.
I'll check it out. I'm putting it into my calendar here.
I have to say that I have to listen to Shai Hulud with attention because it's interesting the things that you mentioned here. That is your favorite composer compared to Michael Ackerfeld. That's a huge compliment, I would say, for Shai Hulud.
Yeah, I just have to say, this is not metal. It's
hardcore.
It's hardcore, but very clever hardcore. The riffs change. It's a lot. He's a master of having really catchy, but not cheesy melodies. Very tricky riffs that he suddenly have one of the coolest riffs you've ever heard, and then it's just going on for 15 seconds, and then it's gone. He's a mastermind. But if you don't like the genre, you're not gonna like the band. But you can I can send you some songs, and then you can get an impression.
Yeah, I would
Maybe
appreciate that.
yeah, it can take some time, but for me, actually, I have a band it's in that style with a former In Vain member who went to the US. We actually have recorded an album and everything. I feel that hardcore is actually the ultimate live music. But that's I
Well,
really love that music, and I think it's the coolest music to play live. But I'll send you some YouTube videos or whatever, and then you can listen
okay.
a little bit, and you can see if it's something for you.
Thank you. I have one final question, but it occurs to me that I haven't asked you about the album artwork. I'm interested in the choosing making or the decision making, sorry, or the guidelines for to the artist for the artwork. I think the expression in the artwork of this king character fits with the fits the mold in the emotional tone on the album. You know, it might be dark, it might be melancholic, but with some resemblance of hope or light in the end, you know. So yeah, what can you tell me about the album cover?
Yeah, maybe when you said in the start, you said I don't remember the word you said.
Overly emotional or
Yeah, but
vulnerable?
melancholic is obviously also a good word to use. I think as some of our we have melodies that are kind of beautiful and have some kind of melodical vibe to them as well. And then like I don't know, do you know the word wistful?
Yeah.
Yeah, so so Solemn, I mean, it's hard to come up with. I've said in the past, one of the hardest things with an album is to come up with the album title. It's very hard. But we like the word I like how it sounds and what it also means. And then that's kind of set the tone for the album artwork. But we didn't kind of say, hey, we want an old man that whole on the cover. She just sent us this, and we gave some feedback, we changed it, worked on the colors. But I think it's something like sincere and something we call it so just find the right word here. Well, the word is actually solemnly, but it's let me try to find a different way to say this. Like it has it's kind of dignified look of this guy, a little bit majestic, a little bit like remorse in it, but not dark, but
Yeah.
sincere. It's like a mix. And as you said, like we try to. I really think, like I've always said, like I mean, a lot of metal bands that has this really negative life approach and lyrics and like pure negativity. We've never been about that. I'm really against it. I feel like you need to you need to try to have a positive view on life and and on everything, and it doesn't mean that things are easy, but we would never be a band with just negative message and like this kind of negative nonsense message in our lyrics. So yeah, there is a certain, what you say, the cliche of something good in the end or whatever, I guess. So maybe that's also a little bit reflected in that cover or the album artwork. But it's mostly kind of, I think that's what she got in her mind when she heard the title and read the lyrics. So she just sent us this, and we thought, yeah, that works, and yeah, that's how it came about.
Well, what it sounds to me, the word solemn in my head is something in the greater sense. You know, it can be melancholic, it can be epic, it can be dark. You know, but
Exactly. Yeah.
in the greater sense of the expression, like a very
Yeah, exactly.
important.
Yeah, if you Google it, you can say it can have a lot of meanings.
Yeah.
It can, as you say, can have a little dark meaning. It can also be something like when something is a special occasion, something
Yeah.
serious, in a lack of word.
So, so then
Important, ceremonial, maybe that's yeah.
exactly, ceremonial. So then you see this king character represented on the album cover. We think of the king as something of very importance, you know, of big importance. So I think it's a good connection there with the feelings and the tones on this album. Okay.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
think that's a good way to put it.
I have one final question for you.
Yes.
If you could assimilate the ideas on your mind, the images in your mind about this album, what it represents for you, and compare them with another form of work that already exists, like a book, a painting, a movie, anything beyond music, which one will it be and why?
If I could compare this album to a book or a
Yeah,
painting.
what this album represents in your mind, the visuals in your mind, with another work.
Oh, that's a very tough question. I mean, it's hard to say this book, like a specific book. Like what I would say it would be like a long book with a lot of, changes in the story, and what a book that you hopefully don't want to read again. And it's not like easy reading, but more like maybe can be heavy to digest, but still very interesting. But sorry, I can't give a specific book that I can say I would remind me about this book at the top of my head. That's too hard. Similar with painting, I must say, I guess. But again, I would say like maybe a general expression, the painting that you can list to look at for a long time and you can discover new details. and you can see stuff and you can be captivated by it. Hopefully something like that. It's hard for me to say a specific painting. Sorry, that's a boring answer. Maybe I'd say, we have had one song that where we mention a painter, and that's was a bonus track on our previous album called "And Quiet Flows the Scheldt." That's a lyric I wrote about when I lived in Antwerp. So it wasn't on the first edition of the album, but on the full album. You can find it on YouTube. And in Antwerp, there's a statue of a famous painter called Paul Rubens, which I actually like a lot. I think he's a fantastic painter. So maybe I'll have to mention one of his, maybe I'll mention him as a painter then, since we have referenced him in the past. But fantastic painter.
Okay, thank you for your answer. I think this is more about the reflection, something that you don't typically consider about your music, beyond like the references beyond your point of view. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate sitting with me today to discuss your music.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks, Alfonso, for those very interesting questions, and thanks for taking the time and really that you prepared so well and really digged into the album. And it's very interesting talking to you.
I honestly, I have to refrain this. Again, this is my favorite album from the band. And I do like a great deal Enigma. It represents so much for me, and I appreciate that you and the rest of the band outdid yourselves with this arc of music. Thank you. I hope to maybe see you in the future here in Mexico. I hope there's a future for you for the band here live. And
yeah, we would definitely love to go to Mexico one day. That would be fantastic.
If you have anything left to say for the audience, please do.
Well, thanks a lot for any of you who kind of held out and listened to the entire interview and keep supporting, metal in Mexico and also if you're into extreme progressive extreme metal with a lot of twists and turns, hopefully you can check our album out. Continue to support Alfonso and his channel. There's a lot of great interviews there. I'm going to check out a few after, and thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you. I have an interview that I will recommend to you. It's with Josef Parvis of the Heimsgard.
Sorry?
Josef Parvis of the Heimsgard, the Norwegian band.
He's a very fascinating guy. Can you send me that link? I think I saw it on your profile, but now I'm try to find it again. Actually, to be honest, I think that's a guy I have to check out more of his work, because obviously he's a very creative and very he's very unique and original songwriter. So recently I added, I know Dørhemskar and I know DHG from the past, but I re-added those albums just recently to my playlist, to my kind of account, because I have to check them out again. And he's a very interesting guy, I think. I never met him. I don't know who he is, but good. I think it's
they released an album last year and it's really good. I sent you the link in the chat. And they are about to release something new this year with like as an alternative, an alter ego of the band. Slightly different, and it should be interesting.
Yeah, I remember, because I just read some interview with him, and he said that he had some kind of more black metal stuff coming or something, or
like the heavier, blacker version of the Heimsgard.
Exactly.
Yeah. Johnar,
that should be cool.
Thank you for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you.